Leah, thanks. Right, what do you think of a potential 12-hour school day? That's what's happening at one of London's schools, although they insist it's not just maths and English. Pupils also get to engage in sports, drama and other extracurricular activities. Well, joining us now in the studio, Andrew O'Neill, he's the head teacher at All Saints Catholic College in London, who are bringing that in, and Harrison Griffiths, a communications officer at the Institute of Economic Affairs, as well as political commentator with Young Voices UK. Andrew, Harrison, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. So let's hear the case, first of all, for and against this. Andrew, talk us through why you're introducing this 12-hour day. Yeah,
I think we've seen a huge change in the last 4-5 years with regards to students and their engagement in school and that sense of belonging that they have to school. So we're introducing a pilot to actually try and get children back into school, because we've got a real attendance crisis, and try and re-engage them. And that's, involving, as you said, an earlier breakfast offer for them and opportunities after school to get homework done, and then all of those fun activities that you mentioned before. So brought in sports activities and also cooking and drama, oracy and pottery.
And before we hear the case against, the trigger for this, Andrew, is what exactly?
Well, I think if we look at schools at the minute, we've got about 9.5 million children in our school system. And we've got about 10% of children who are not in school every day. 25% of children are persistent absentees. We also have cost of living crisis and issues around parents being able to afford some of the provisions that no longer exist, actually, around youth services. So, children have a lot of effectively unstructured time, and that's resulting in, I think, children going home, spending lots and lots of time on their smartphones, and that's just not healthy.
Harrison, the case against.
So when you look at literature reviews, a literature review into the broad state of the evidence in terms of the impact of increasing school hours, it's very mixed in terms of outcomes. Nobody has established a clear link between a longer number of school hours and better educational, health, wealth outcomes going forward. So the bigger point is what you do with that time. Now, it sounds as though Andrew's experiment may very well be a good thing, and I don't necessarily oppose that. The main point here is that I don't think we should be talking about this in terms of a national policy. I don't know, and nobody can ever know, the optimal amount of schooling and what they do in those hours of schooling for each and every child. And so it should be up to parents and, as they get older, students themselves to have as much choice as possible about how they do their schooling. So vive la différence, I say.
Andrew, what's been the reaction from students in particular? Because I was reading scientific research somewhere where it said waking up a student, a young teenager, at 7 o'clock is like waking up an older adult at like 4 in the morning. And I just wonder how pupils at your school are feeling about this happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pilot, so we've got 120 children who are doing this. But at the minute, they're loving it. They're really enjoying it. We've had lots of visitors, lots of interest, people coming into the school. And, their attendance to it is fantastic. They're buzzing about it. They're leaving at the end of the school day. There's a palpable sense of fun at their end of the day meal, because I didn't mention that they eat a meal together. I think, going back to what Harrison said a moment ago, the Education Policy Institute put out a paper on this about 6 to 8 weeks ago. And a lot of the research focuses on extending the school day and academic attainment outcomes. And I think we need to make a clear distinction here that there's lots that we do in schools that is all about measuring attainment. But there's an awful lot of what we do in schools that's about fun and enjoyment. And we need to not forget that piece about education and how important it is that children feel connected to their schools.
Everyone wants kids in the classroom and everyone wants them to enjoy their experience there. But Harrison, I wonder, in terms of mental health, breaking children out of that routine, more time in school, what are your main concerns about well-being, I suppose, and mental health?
Yeah, so I would very much describe myself as a lockdown sceptic, generally speaking, but one of the more ridiculous arguments that is made by lockdown sceptics writ large is that taking children out of school for as long as it did was bad for their mental health outcomes. It was unquestionably good for children's mental health outcomes not to be in school. Each year you see rates of teen suicide, for example, fall in July when they're not in school. This is a phenomenon that's observed across Europe and across the United States as well. So the idea that there's a positive link between students' mental health and being in school, it's just not borne out by the evidence.
That's interesting. I mean, there's probably aspects of it that, when people make the argument, is probably that they didn't get any education or proper education during those years at all. So I think, you know, there's nuances to that. Harrison, my question is whether if Andrew's 12-hour experiment is fantastic, could it be rolled out more broadly? I mean, is there funding sufficient for it? It must cost schools a lot more to provide more hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're already looking at stretched budgets, and we're already looking at a broader fiscal situation where the government doesn't have an awful lot of wiggle room to spare with interest rates high. We're looking at national debt servicing payments being the third or fourth biggest expenditure item for central government. But, I mean, I was very keen to stress the point I made originally again, which is that central planning of this, like the government, like national policymakers should not touch this with a 10-foot pole. These should be bottom-up experiments that are led by entrepreneurial teachers, and I really do wish you the best of luck with this experiment. I hope it all works out well for you. They should be led by teachers, with students, with parents, and not something that's imposed from the top down, because we just don't have the knowledge to say this on behalf of every student, every school, every parent in the country.
Andrew, final word.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree to a point with what Harrison's just said. At no point am I suggesting that we mandate that this is a policy. Actually, this needs to be about head teachers running their schools and working out what is best for them. The problem is that education has, I think, in the last few years been put so low down the list of priorities for the government that there isn't the funding in place to do these kinds of things and look at children's education in this kind of way. And I think that's what needs to change.
Really interesting debate, gents. Thanks so much for joining us. Andrew,
Thank you.
Harrison, cheers.
Thank you.